Lumen is here, and it can make your factory stand out amongst the crowd or be lost in a pit of darkness. But these tips will make sure that you hit the ground running, and our designs at the end of the video will help you upgrade your lighting in no time. However, first off, we do need to understand the lighting system in Satisfactory. And I should also note that Lumen isn't officially supported by the devs, though it should come 1.0, in my opinion at least, though it isn't planned. So don't feel you need to run Lumen in your game. If it's making it difficult to run the game, just play it with normal lighting. But for those of you who can run Lumen, Lumen allows for a more realistic simulation of how light works in real life. Enclosing yourself in a room will put you in complete darkness, and removing a roof will allow natural light to flood in, or you can even add a window. However, Lumen in its current form doesn't bounce off multiple surfaces or give off as much ambient light as it normally would in real life. So we're left with factories that are looking very dark, leaving us with two other options. We can add lights to our factory, which are limited in size, or use signs, which can be manipulated to mimic lights by turning up the emission strength, then removing the icons and turning the background to a color you'd like to use for lighting. Now, with the basics out of the way, let's go through some super important tips. Firstly, when building with natural light in mind, consider the orbit of the sun. There's very little point adding small windows if the sun is on the wrong side of the building. The star in Satisfactory does travel from west to east, so do bear that in mind. Also, when using dedicated lights, lighting still follows the same system as previously. You can block light with other buildables. I tend to use pillars or beams, for example, to help direct the light and shadows in my builds. But another important point to know is that T-junction walkways still allow light to pass through if you want to play about with that in your build. Dedicated lights also have a larger light radius depending on how far the light is from the object it's lighting. For example, a factory with really high ceilings, you may want to make use of ceiling lights because they're going to be able to light up a larger area. Whereas particularly low ceilings are going to work much better with signs, because signs with the new rendering system, which allows us to use lots of signs without it tanking our performance, only lights up a few signs when we're nearby rather than all of them in the world. Given that information, let's cover the types of lighting that we have. So we have down lighting, such as the use of ceiling lights. These are great for lighting up large areas or walkways. For this, I tend to use ceiling lights, and then I use beams alongside that in order to angle the light, or at least direct where we want the focus of the light, by placing the beam underneath the ceiling light. Another great option is to place signs on a beam sunken inside a foundation. This gives the light a great border for the lighting and really looks great above a factory line. I also like the use of strip signs on the underside of beams as ceiling lights, and larger signs placed intermittently. They also add a lot of light to the build, so it's definitely worth using these throughout. Next, we have uplighting. This is great for highlighting specific parts of a build, such as elevators and buildables, though this can also be done with mounted wall floodlights by placing them on tilted walls. Now, when it comes to using signs, I tend to place them on beams. This is because we can rotate the beams to give us the right position firstly, but also to allow us to change the plane that the sign is on. Speaking of planes in which signs are on, you can also place signs on the end of a pillar, and then you can rotate the sign, which will allow you to have 360-degree angles for your signs. We then have side lighting. Now, I use these to light walkways up. This can be done to great effect with strip signs or sporadically placing smaller signs. I use this to great effect in one of my blueprints for factory borders. Speaking of which, if you would like me to cover some lighting blueprints, do let me know in the comments below, and perhaps I'll work on that shortly. Moving on, we do have a subcategory of side lighting, which is backlighting, essentially turning the side light the opposite way around to light up walls. This is purely for design, but it can be used to great effect when building a theme or atmosphere for your factory. And finally, we have underlighting, again similar to downlighting, but the purpose being to highlight a border of a factory. It's indirect lighting and can add a little bit of flavor to your factory by placing lights under slightly raised buildables or slightly raised pillars, beams for example. With the general lighting designs out of the way, I did want to mention a few other specific ideas that you may find interesting. But before I do, if you are finding this video helpful, please do hit the thumbs up, and if you do want to see more videos like this, then make sure to subscribe. One thing that I do need to mention though when it comes to lighting is it's not all about lighting. That doesn't sound right, but trust me here. It's equally about using shadows. They're just as important when it comes to good lighting design because they allow you to add contrast against highlighted items. So do think about that when you are building all these lights. Don't flood the area with lights unless you really want to. As for some specific ideas that I've had that I want to play around with a little bit more in my build certainly, is the idea of placing signs facing belts so that they light up the various items running along them, or also behind elevators so that we can see the silhouette of the item as it goes up or down the elevator. Or another thing that we could potentially do is clip these signs within buildables. For example, machines that are working like the constructor just beneath the top roof that it has. I think that can be a really interesting way to add a little bit more light to your build, maybe using a different color in order to make it stand out more. But most importantly, with Lumen being so new, it's really important for us to play around with design ideas, trying different things out, using different colors to your lighting in a given area to create complementing schemes. What I'd love to see is for you guys to share your screenshots on Twitter with the hashtag #SatisfactoryScreenshots so that we can all see them in the regular Coffee Stain developer streams. But guys, I hope you found this video helpful, and thank you all for the continued support over on Patreon, which allows me to continue creating content like this. Special thanks does go to all of our amazing patrons, most notably our Totalxclipse patrons, James Owen, Firefless and Treble, as well as our Lunars, the Calamity, Ben, Star, Shoku the Emin Wolf, and That Dude AW, as well as our Blood Moon of the day, which today is Brain Slug. Until next time, as always, ciao for now.